Tristan had pursued me for 3 months before I agreed to be with him, almost on a whim. However, the same night he made our relationship public on social media, his childhood sweetheart, Willow, ended her life by leaping from a building. A month later, Tristan asked me to meet him on the rooftop, saying he wanted to show me the stars. When I arrived, he wrapped his hands around my neck and pushed me off the edge, blaming me for Willow's death and declaring he would avenge her. When I regained consciousness, Tristan was kneeling before me, holding a bouquet of flowers and professing his love. I threw the flowers to the ground, crushed them beneath my feet, and told him harshly to stay away from me. Later that evening, as I walked back to the dormitory with my roommate Lorraine, hand in hand, we noticed an elaborate display of flowers arranged in the shape of a heart near the dorm entrance. Lit beautifully, it attracted a crowd of classmates. Standing in the center was Tristan, bouquet in hand. His tall, striking figure caught everyone's attention, making him a picture-perfect scene. Lorraine was so thrilled that she pushed me forward, shouting, "Celine, he's going to confess to you. How romantic." As I approached, the crowd began to cheer. Tristan looked at me with an intense gaze, then knelt down and offered me the flowers, saying, "Celine, I like you. Will you be my girlfriend?" The crowd chanted for me to accept, and Lorraine whispered urgently, "Celine, he's been pursuing you for months. Say yes." But as Tristan stood there pretending to be sincere, I grabbed the flowers he handed me, threw them down, and crushed them underfoot. The crowd fell silent, stunned. I told him coldly, "Get away from me and don't bother me again," then turned and walked straight into the dormitory. Behind me, whispers erupted. "Is she crazy? That's Tristan she just rejected so harshly," someone said. "Does she think being pursued for 3 months makes her royalty?" Lorraine hurried after me, grabbing my arm. "Celine, even if you don't like him, you shouldn't humiliate him like that," she said, visibly upset. I looked at her calmly and replied, "You're my friend, yet instead of asking why I did this, you're defending him? Do you want me to apologize?" She was momentarily taken aback before recovering and clasping my hand, saying, "I'm sorry, Celine. I was wrong. I'll always stand by your side." She walked me back to the dorm, unaware of the faint smirk on my face. In my previous life, during this same grand confession, I had accepted Tristan's proposal on impulse to save face. At the time, my classmates envied me for landing someone as seemingly perfect as Tristan. Charming, considerate, and devoted. His pursuit of me was the talk of the school, and his stellar grades, good looks, and accolades made him admired by all. I felt fortunate, until everything unraveled. Less than a week after our relationship became official, Tristan posted a picture of me holding flowers and gazing at him on social media. The comments were full of congratulations, but one stood out. "Are you really with her? Are you doing this to hurt me?" It was from Willow, his childhood friend. Rumors had long circulated that Tristan and Willow were destined to be together, but he had publicly denied them and pursued me instead. Feeling uneasy, I asked Lorraine, who had attended high school with both of them, if there was anything between Tristan and Willow. Lorraine assured me there wasn't, explaining that their families were simply close friends and their bond was like that of siblings. Reassured, I dismissed my doubts, until tragedy struck. A few days later, Willow jumped from the rooftop of the teaching building. Witnesses said she wore a white dress and appeared almost like a butterfly as she descended, her blood staining the gardenia pattern of her dress. The incident shocked the school, though it was quickly suppressed. For a week after her death, I didn't hear from Tristan. The once attentive messages and calls stopped entirely. I assumed he was grieving and decided not to disturb him. Then, a month later, he reappeared, acting as though nothing had changed. He resumed his routine, bringing me breakfast, attending classes with me, and walking me to the dorm. I thought he had moved on from his grief. Since she was gone, he still had his own life to live. So, when he invited me to the rooftop to stargaze that night, I didn't think twice about it. When I arrived, he was sitting on the ledge with 2 empty beer cans beside him. I approached him from behind and frowned. "Why are you sitting there drinking? It's dangerous. Come down right now." But he responded, "The stars look better from here. You should try it too." I hesitated, sensing something was off about him that evening, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Noticing my reluctance, he turned to me and said, "Celine, this is where Willow jumped." I thought we'd just watch the stars, but being here makes me think of her. Can you join me? Don't worry, I'll keep you safe. His pitiful expression persuaded me, so I climbed up to sit beside him, taking extra care. He smiled faintly, then produced a beer can as if by magic and offered it to me. Have a drink with me. I wrinkled my nose. Tristan, you know I don't drink. He didn't press me and drank alone while gazing at the moon. I looked up at the twinkling stars, my mind drifting. What was Willow thinking? Why would she take her life? I wondered aloud. After a moment of silence, he sighed. Why do you think so? He turned to look at me, and there was something unsettling in his gaze. My heart suddenly raced for no apparent reason. It's late. We should head back to the dorm, I said. Before I could move, he grabbed my arm. His eyes bloodshot, and he seemed unhinged. Celine, why do you think Willow killed herself? His grip tightened, and I panicked, struggling to free myself. How would I know? Are you insane? I stammered. He let out a strange laugh, holding on to me with alarming strength as though he might break my arm. If it weren't for you, Willow wouldn't be dead. Why don't you go down and keep her company? His voice was cold and accusing. Are you crazy, Tristan? What does her death have to do with me? I yelled, terrified. Desperately, I kicked and bit him, but he seemed impervious to pain, holding me even tighter. She's gone because of you, and now you'll experience what she felt. Without warning, he shoved me off the edge. My body went limp as I plummeted, his deranged grin the last thing I saw before darkness consumed me. Back at the dormitory, my other two roommates joined in the gossip. Jean Wanwan teased, If you don't like Tristan, such a good-looking guy, then who do you like, Celine? I casually flipped open a book. It depends on how I feel. There's no specific type. I think Celine made the right choice tonight. Ginger chimed in. Even if Tristan is handsome, his past with Willow is murky. It's better not to get involved. Tristan and Willow were just ordinary classmates. Lorraine interjected defensively, her voice louder than usual. Ginger awkwardly shrugged. I was just saying, don't take it so seriously. Then she retreated to her seat. Lorraine turned to me. Celine, I swear there's nothing between them. Everyone from high school can confirm it. I slipped on my headphones and replied, You don't need to explain. I'm not close to Tristan, and I'm not interested in his personal life. Seeing my disinterest, she hesitated before reluctantly falling silent. The next day was Saturday, and none of us had classes. Jean Wanwan suggested going out for dinner, and though I wasn't particularly enthusiastic, I agreed not to spoil the mood. At 6 p.m., we went to a popular hot pot restaurant near campus. Just as we settled in and prepared to order, Tristan and his roommates walked in. His friend Jonah smiled at Lorraine. Looks like we're late. No tables left. Mind if we join you? Of course not. Lorraine started, but I cut her off sharply. I do. This table isn't big enough for 8 people. My bluntness left everyone at the table, including Lorraine, visibly uncomfortable. Tristan gritted his teeth and asked, Do you dislike me that much? His persistence left me no choice but to be honest. Yes. So stop going out of your way to show up around me. His so-called chance encounters weren't coincidences, and he wanted me to call him out in front of everyone. His face turned a mix of colors, which I found strangely satisfying. Lorraine, unable to bear the tension, jumped in. Celine, don't say that. I invited them here. I told them this hot pot place was amazing and wanted them to try it. It's not what you think. I carelessly ripped open the packaging for the chopsticks and bowls. If there's no room, you can wait outside or try another restaurant. Why insist on sharing a table with us? Despite my firm stance, Tristan's roommates seemed displeased. Jonah's expression darkened as he reprimanded me. Celine, I never thought you'd be so petty. Tristan must have been blind to fall for you. Jonah, what are you saying? Ginger, who had been holding back, finally snapped. She slammed the table and stood up. We got this table first. What's wrong with us not wanting to share? Celine was just being honest. Why are you blaming her? You're a grown man. How can you act so childish? Jonah's face turned livid, but his other 2 roommates pulled him and Tristan aside, saying, Let's just leave and eat somewhere else. We can come back another time. Jonah, however, refused to move. He glared at me and demanded I apologize to Tristan, claiming Tristan's tolerance of me had made me arrogant enough to insult him repeatedly. I almost laughed out of frustration. Turning to Tristan, I said coldly, "Why are you pursuing me?" "You might as well explain it to everyone so they'll stop assuming I'm the one humiliating you." Tristan's expression shifted and he looked away. I then glanced at the door and said, "Or is it because of her?" Everyone followed my gaze, and Jonah was the first to exclaim, "Willow!" Sure enough, Willow and her roommate had just walked in. She noticed us immediately. More specifically, Tristan and me. Approaching with a composed smile, she asked, "What's going on here?" Jonah sneered, "Oh, nothing. We just tried to share a table and got bitten by a dog." Before Ginger could respond, I picked up the hot tea in front of me and splashed it on his face. "Watch your mouth," I said firmly. Jonah, shocked, wiped his face and pointed at me angrily. Finally, Tristan shouted, "Enough!" His loud voice silenced everyone. Willow intervened to diffuse the tension. "Since there's no space here, why don't you join us in our private room? We reserved one and there are plenty of empty seats." Tristan's face darkened. After glancing at me, he turned and left with Willow. The others slowly dispersed. Jean Wan Wan, who had stayed silent, gave Ginger and me a thumbs up from her corner. "You two are so bold." Meanwhile, Lorraine sulked, focusing on her food. The meal ended awkwardly in less than an hour. Lorraine claimed she had errands to run and didn't return to the dorm with us. On the way back, Ginger whispered, "Celine, don't you think Lorraine's behavior is strange? She always defends Tristan and keeps trying to pair you two up, even after you rejected him. It's obvious she invited him tonight on purpose. Her actions aren't just odd, they're suspicious." Toward the end of the semester, Jean Wan Wan and Lorraine were busy studying in the library. Ginger pulled me aside with a conspiratorial grin. "Didn't you ask me before if I knew any of Tristan's high school classmates?" I nodded, recalling that conversation after the hot pot incident. Since Ginger was from the same city as them but attended a different school, I had hoped she might know someone. At the time, she said she didn't. Now, she showed me her phone. I didn't think of anyone then, but I recently asked some classmates and finally got a lead. Here's a chat with one of Tristan's old classmates. Ginger had asked about Tristan and Willow's relationship. The reply was detailed. Tristan? He was the most popular guy in school and totally devoted to Willow. He'd do anything for her, even let her scold or hit him. Everyone knew he liked her. But Willow? She was hot and cold, even dating other guys while keeping him around. Ginger asked what happened later. The response continued. After graduation, Tristan applied to the same university as Willow on purpose. At the graduation party, she broke up with her boyfriend, and Tristan comforted her. He was so gentle that everyone envied her. Then something happened. Everyone was drunk and dared them to kiss. And they did. Willow even initiated it. They kissed so passionately they didn't notice how long it lasted. Ginger pressed further. What happened after that? The reply came quickly. The next day, Willow acted completely different. When classmates teased them, she firmly said they were just friends and asked them to stop joking. Tristan was crushed and stayed depressed for a long time. After reading this, Ginger commented, "Lorraine, being one of their classmates, must have known about this. So why did she lie to us?" I nodded, glancing at her phone. "Why don't we ask Lorraine again?" Ginger's eyes sparkled as she typed a quick message. Within minutes, the reply came, "Oh, I remember Lorraine." She and Willow were inseparable in high school. Wherever Willow went, Lorraine followed. Willow once joked about pairing Tristan with Lorraine when she got tired of his attention. Both Ginger and I were left speechless. After reading the messages, Ginger cautiously speculated, "Do you think Tristan might have started pursuing you because he was heartbroken over Willow and needed a way to mend his feelings?" I thought back to the incident at the hot pot restaurant when I had tested Tristan by mentioning Willow. His response back then indeed gave the impression that his interest in me was somehow tied to her. But then there was Lorraine. She was close to Willow. Could it be that, annoyed by Tristan's persistence, Willow had enlisted Lorraine to push him toward me? Ginger's theory sounded plausible. If Tristan still harbored feelings for Willow, it was possible that he was trying to get over her by shifting his focus to someone else. This realization only deepened my feelings of disgust and rejection toward Tristan. On the day finals ended, Ginger excitedly suggested a camping trip to Tanai Mountain, asking us to return 2 days later. Despite her irritation with Lorraine, she still extended the invitation out of consideration for our shared roommate bond. When we arrived, it turned out that Tristan and his roommates were there too. Jonah shot us a hostile look and sneered, "You keep insisting you've turned Tristan down, but here you are, following us. Playing hard to get, are we?" I stared at him like he was a fool. Whether he was always this brainless or not, I couldn't be bothered to engage. Ignoring him, we found a more secluded spot to set up our tents and prepare the barbecue grill. As we busied ourselves, Lorraine wandered off to join Tristan and didn't return for quite a while. Ginger, munching on skewers with oil smeared around her mouth, said dismissively, "Forget her. Let's just enjoy our food." By the time we finished eating, night had fallen, but Lorraine was still nowhere to be seen. Jean Wanwan, growing concerned, suggested we go look for her since we were roommates after all. When we couldn't locate Tristan's roommates, we eventually found Tristan and Lorraine behind their tent. Lorraine was clutching Tristan's hand and sobbing. Driven by curiosity, the three of us quietly stayed hidden and observed. "I've done everything I promised you," Lorraine said through her tears. "I don't know why Celine won't give in. It's not my fault if she keeps rejecting you." Tristan stood there, looking cold and unresponsive. "I'm not blaming you," he muttered. "How can you say that?" Lorraine retorted. "You haven't replied to my messages or acknowledged me when I talk to you. You weren't like this when you asked for my help to pursue Celine." Tristan frowned impatiently. "I told you, I'm not blaming you. What do you want from me?" Lorraine seemed taken aback by his attitude, but continued, "Is Willow ignoring you again? Is that why you're upset?" Tristan ran a hand through his hair, visibly annoyed but silent. Lorraine seemed to piece things together. "I see. You threw yourself into chasing Celine, hoping to provoke Willow. She even argued with you and broke up with her boyfriend because of it. But after Celine turned you down, Willow started acting hot and cold again, and now that you've realized you don't stand a chance with Celine, you're in a foul mood and shutting me out." Tristan didn't respond, staring instead at the dark lawn. Lorraine nodded bitterly. "I was right, wasn't I? You only care about Willow. When you needed me, you treated me well. But now that I've failed to help you, you've discarded me. If all you wanted was to provoke Willow, why didn't you just use me instead of going out of your way to pursue Celine?" At that moment, Ginger's phone suddenly rang, cutting through the tension. Tristan and Lorraine immediately stopped talking and turned toward the noise. Panicking, we ducked down and fled the scene, careful not to make a sound. Instead of returning to our tents, we hid behind a small hill, eager to gossip in private. Ginger opened her phone and read a new message from Tristan's former classmate. "I had a reunion with some old classmates today, and we talked about Tristan and Willow. Guess what? Lorraine has feelings for Tristan. Back when Willow joked about pairing her with him, she actually fell for him. Later, Tristan rejected her, which led to a huge argument between him and Willow. After that, Lorraine and Willow had a falling out too. Ginger and I exchanged wide-eyed looks, silently mouthing the same thought. How dramatic. We were stunned to realize Tristan's supposed devotion to Willow had been an elaborate act. While I could understand his heartbreak over losing Willow, what infuriated me was his audacity to claim Willow's death was somehow my fault. Could it be that Willow couldn't handle seeing me with Tristan? It became clear why Lorraine lied. She did it all for Tristan. Both of them disgusted me. Ginger angrily turned off her phone, and we composed ourselves before heading back to the tent. Lorraine was already there, her eyes red and puffy. She looked at us with suspicion. "Where were you just now?" she demanded. Ginger quickly fabricated an excuse. "We went out to look for you. When we couldn't find you, we came back." Jean Wanwan chimed in. "Yeah, we were all really worried." Lorraine didn't buy it. Rising to her feet, she glared at us coldly. "Don't lie to me. I saw you sneaking off just now," Lorraine accused, leaving the three of us speechless for a moment. Then, turning to me, she said, "Celine, since you're already aware, there's nothing more to explain. I admit I kept the truth about Tristan and Willow from you, but now that you've turned Tristan down, please stick to your decision." Her next words baffled me. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Tristan has agreed to date me," she said firmly. "From now on, he won't bother you anymore because he's my boyfriend now. I hope you'll make an effort to stay away from him." I was so angry I nearly laughed. Lorraine, if you're willing to be someone else's stepping stone, that's your choice. But don't assume everyone is like you. I couldn't care less about Tristan. Her expression darkened, but she responded, he'll fall for me eventually. The four of us squeezed into the tent and endured an awkward night. Early the next morning, Lorraine announced she would be leaving with Tristan, so the three of us descended the mountain on our own. On the way down, Ginger shook her head in amazement. What kind of over-the-top teen drama are they acting out? Even the plot twists are so cliché. When we got back to the dorm, we each took a night to rest before heading home for summer vacation. The following day, when I arrived home, my parents had prepared a table filled with my favorite dishes. Seeing them again felt surreal, as though an entire lifetime had passed. Reflecting on my untimely death in my previous life, I couldn't help but wonder how devastated my parents must have been when they heard the tragic news. As these thoughts overwhelmed me, tears started to fall. Celine, what's wrong? Did something happen at school? My parents asked, alarmed, putting down their chopsticks to comfort me. Shaking my head, I replied, it's nothing. I'm just really touched. I haven't had Mom's braised pig trotters in so long. You silly child, my mother said, shaking her head with a fond smile. The summer break flew by like sand slipping through an hourglass. Soon enough, I was dragging my suitcase back to school. Before I even entered the dorm building, I overheard some classmates chatting nearby. Did you hear? Tristan and Lorraine are a couple now. Really? Them? Wasn't Tristan chasing Celine just last semester? Yeah, but it's true. They got together at the end of last semester when everyone had already gone home for the holidays. When I entered the dorm, the other three had already arrived. Ginger eagerly showed me the local treats she'd brought back, treating them like rare treasures. Before we could talk much, the door burst open. Willow stormed in, yelling, Lorraine, get out here! Lorraine went out reluctantly. Jianwanwan nervously whispered, they're not going to fight, are they? I wasn't sure. When Lorraine returned, her eyes were swollen and a red handprint marked her face. Unable to bear the sight, Jean offered her a boiled egg to ease the swelling, but Lorraine knocked it away angrily. Don't act like you care, she snapped before collapsing onto her bed in tears. Willow confronted Lorraine several more times, leaving her teary-eyed every time. Their arguments were intense, but they didn't cause Tristan and Lorraine to split up. A week later, Tristan publicly confirmed their relationship on his WeChat moments. After one of our classes, Willow approached Lorraine again. This time, instead of taking her outside, she slapped her hard in front of everyone. How pathetic can you be? Willow shouted, trembling with anger. But Lorraine didn't cry. Instead, she smirked. Who's really pathetic here, Willow? You ignored Tristan, stringing him along because you knew he wouldn't give up on you. But guess what? He's over you now. He's my boyfriend, and he's even announced it publicly. No matter how many times you come at me, I won't let go of him. Willow pointed at her furiously. Don't get cocky. Tristan's just toying with you. If I go to him now, he'll dump you immediately. Then go ahead and try. Lorraine replied calmly. Willow stormed out, leaving the room buzzing with gossip. Everyone was stunned by the dramatic twists in this love triangle. I thought Willow would approach Tristan and he would break up with Lorraine, but days passed with no such news. Instead, Ginger shared that Tristan and Willow had a heated argument. In her frustration, Willow turned to her recently ex-boyfriend, only for him to humiliate her. Outraged, she confronted Lorraine again, and the two had another major fight. I couldn't help but feel relieved that I had distanced myself from their chaotic drama. If I hadn't, I might have become a laughingstock like them. This time, things had played out differently. Tristan and Lorraine were together, and Willow's tragic leap off the building hadn't occurred. A sense of relief washed over me. Despite all the reckless behavior in their tangled relationships, life was precious. She had been so full of energy. It was better this way, but my relief didn't last long. On Saturday morning, Ginger woke me in a panic. Celine, something terrible has happened, she cried. Willow jumped off the roof of our teaching building last night. For a moment, my mind went completely blank, my body frozen as though the blood had turned to ice. After a long pause, I finally managed to ask, what? We raced to the teaching building. The area had been sealed off, and we weren't allowed to get close. Many classmates were both shocked and frightened, while some said they had been leaving the library late the previous night and had seen Willow jump. Her white dress had been soaked in blood. I stood there frozen, feeling as if I were reliving the exact moment of Willow's death in my previous life. The scene of Tristan grabbing my arm and pushing me off the roof replayed in my mind over and over. Although it was hot and humid in September, I felt like I'd been plunged into an icy abyss, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. Willow was gone. Had nothing changed from my past life? Would Tristan still blame me and push me off the roof? Anxiety gnawed at my heart. Lorraine seemed even worse off than I was. Her face was ghostly pale, and she was plagued by nightmares, waking us in the middle of the night with her screaming. Clutching her blanket, she sobbed, "It wasn't me. It has nothing to do with me." After 2 days of ignoring her, Jean Wanwan finally couldn't stand it anymore. When Lorraine began crying again in the dead of night, Jean tried to comfort her, asking, "What's wrong, Lorraine?" Lorraine buried her head in her hands, shaking it violently. "It wasn't me. I didn't do it. She jumped by herself." Ginger hesitantly asked, "Were you with Willow the night she jumped?" Lorraine's face instantly drained of color and she shouted in a panic, "I wasn't." She was on edge the whole night, and early the next morning, the police came to take her away. They said she was the last person Willow had seen before her death and needed to assist with the investigation. The school was shrouded in a somber mood after Willow's death. During our morning class, Tristan came to find me. I instinctively hid behind Ginger. He looked unwell, with dark circles under his eyes. Stepping closer, he said, "Celine, I need to talk to you alone." Avoiding his gaze, I replied, "I have nothing to say to you." He frowned and lowered his voice. "Do you remember how strong the wind was on the roof that night?" I stared at him, shock and fear welling up inside me. After asking Ginger and the others to head to class, I demanded, "What do you mean by that?" Tristan gave a bitter smile. "The night I heard about Willow's death, everything came back to me. Judging by your reaction just now, you must remember it too. No wonder you rejected my confession. You already knew." I wasn't surprised he remembered. If I could be reborn, it wasn't strange for him to recall past events. Keeping my expression cold, I said, "Since you remember everything, why are you here? Was ruining my life once not enough? Do you want to hurt me again?" Pain flickered across his face. "I'm sorry. I misunderstood what happened back then." I clenched my fists, suppressing the urge to hit him. What's the point of apologizing now? I couldn't do anything to you in my past life, but in this one, I just want to stay as far away from you as possible. He nodded. "I understand. I won't bother you again. I just came to explain. Back then, I misunderstood because Lorraine told me Willow had seen you that night and that you two argued. I was out of my mind with grief, which is why I acted so irrationally. Later, after I was taken in by the police, Lorraine confessed that she'd lied. She admitted you weren't with Willow at all. It was her. Lorraine had always been jealous of Willow and used our connection to provoke her. That's what drove Willow to her breaking point." I found his explanation absurd. "You believed Lorraine so easily? Even if you had doubts about me, couldn't you have gone to the police? Did you really have to take things to such an extreme?" Tristan gave a bitter laugh. "I was wrong. If it weren't for my inability to win Willow's love, none of this would have happened. First, I used you to make her jealous, and now it's Lorraine. When Willow came to me a few days ago, I refused to break up with Lorraine out of spite, wanting her to feel the pain I'd endured. If I hadn't acted that way, maybe none of this would have happened." The investigation into Willow's death concluded quickly. It turned out Lorraine had been with her on the rooftop the night she died. The two had a heated argument over Tristan, and Willow, unable to handle Lorraine's harsh words, jumped in a fit of rage. Lorraine was expelled, and Tristan dropped out of school. The administration offered condolences to Willow's parents, and life at school slowly returned to normal. Classes continued, exams were taken, and the rooftop of the teaching building was locked for good. A new girl from another department moved into our dormitory. She was lively and adorable. The four of us quickly bonded, sharing meals and going on trips during vacations. Life became cheerful and colorful again. The only thing that lingered was the sense that history had a strange way of repeating itself. Even without my involvement, Willow's fate had remained the same. Tristan and Lorraine vanished from my world, but this time I was still alive. Having been wrongfully killed in my past life, I was grateful for this second chance to protect myself. It truly is a blessing to be alive,